Hello and welcome to the 12th episode of The Practical PM, your friend, philosopher and guide to product management. In the previous several episodes, we have seen how event analytics can help us answer business, product and analytics questions quickly and in depth. You would recall that the ability to do event analytics well depends on the availability of these data in event analytics tool: events, event properties and user properties. In this episode, we will focus on where this data comes from and how to design it well so that when we have to get answers to our questions, we can do that quickly. Let us start with events. Event data needs to be sent through code, and ideally an event should be sent to the event analytics tool right at the time when the corresponding action happens. So in our example of an e-commerce platform, when a user places an order, that's when order placed event should be emitted and sent to the event analytics tool. So designing and implementing events data is an integral part of the product development process. If you are the one who is integrating an event analytics tool for the first time in your product, then you will need an engineer who is the tech owner of the entire process. If you are launching a new feature in a product that already has event analytics integrated, then you want to ensure that you design the events well and make this a part of the document that you use to convey requirements to your engineering team, whether it is a PRD or a product brief or user stories, whatever it is that you use. Also, event testing should be a part of the QA plan. QA should have a way to test the accuracy of the events being emitted, and they should include it whether they are doing feature testing or regression testing. Now, the event design itself. Whether you are designing events for the first time for the entire product or you are designing it for an incremental feature to be launched, it helps to think of events in these three buckets: user lifecycle events, generic screen and CTA events. CTA, for those who are not familiar, stands for call to action, and screen specific events. We will understand these better with the help of examples as always. Starting with user lifecycle events. In our favorite e-commerce platform example, these are some of the things that users do on your product which are important. They create an account, they log in, they view product details, they add product to the cart, they make payment, they place order. So you want events corresponding to these to be emitted as and when these actions happen. Then there are things that happen to the users which the product or the system does. Like their order is shipped, it is delivered, it may be returned if they requested it, the refund is processed, etc. And you would want to emit events corresponding to these as well. Apart from user lifecycle events, a good way to cover all bases is to send a generic event for every screen or page viewed on your product. It can be a screen viewed event where, apart from the event, you will capture screen ID or screen name as a property so that while analyzing, every screen can be uniquely identified. The advantage of sending a generic event like this is that you always have a basic grasp on the actions of the user on your platform, even if some specific events are not captured. Similar generic events can be sent for CTAs that are common across your product or the site. Like the screen viewed event, you can send a CTA clicked event every time a button is clicked on the product, and you can send the button's ID or name as a property to able to uniquely identify specific CTAs. Just like the screen viewed event, the advantage of capturing this generic event is that you always have a basic handle on user actions on your product, even if some other specific events are not captured. Finally, you should go through your product screen by screen to see if certain screens have information or action that should be captured for analytics purpose. For example, in your e-commerce platform, if you have an all order screen for the users to view their orders, then you may want to emit an event every time the user views the status of an order so that you can later analyze with what frequency is the order status viewing feature used. Similarly, on the product screen, if the user can do these kinds of actions like viewing a different variant, viewing shipping info, viewing seller comparison, then you should have events to capture these actions as well. So now we know how to come up with an extensive list of events to capture user actions on your product. Equally important is figuring out what all properties to send with each of these events. So let us talk about that now. In case of generic screen viewed event, as already mentioned, you should send screen ID, screen name, screen URL kind of properties to be able to uniquely identify the screen viewed. One of the other properties you should capture is where did the user come to this screen from. I have used the property name origin here to capture this. Origin could be another screen on the product, or it could be an external website or app. You would want to capture this property in either case. Note another property here which I have called external origin tag. I have used a generic name here, but essentially if your origin is external, you may want to capture more details about that external origin. You may want to capture the exact URL of the website, or you may want to capture UTM parameters, and really anything meaningful that you can track about the external traffic. One thing to understand here is that this property will be available only if the origin is external, which is fine. In Event Analytics tool, there are graceful ways of doing analytics even if certain properties are absent, and really all the properties in case of Event Analytics are optional. So you should set a property only when it is applicable. If your origin is internal, then this property will not be set, and that is fine. Another similar property could be screen URL. You may want to send this property only if the screen in question is a web screen, while you may want to keep it empty if it is an app screen, and that will again be fine. So this is about the screen viewed event that we should send for all these screens, whether they are on web or app, to our Event Analytics tool. Then in case of the generic CTA clicked event, you can again send the CTA name and ID as identifying properties, as we have discussed earlier also. You can also send a CTA type property in case you have different kinds of CTAs on your product like buttons, tabs, cards, etc. Those can be identified with this property. Then you should also send the screen name and ID on which the CTA is present, which gives you more information while analyzing these events. And finally, if there is a possibility that the same CTA can be present multiple times on the same screen, then you can capture that in another property called CTA position. Like some of the properties in screen viewed event, CTA position property can be treated as optional. This can be present only if you are expecting that on a given screen the same CTA can be present multiple times. So that is about generic events. Coming to specific events, whether they are lifecycle events or screen specific events, while deciding on the list of properties, you may want to consider information across all these three buckets. The details of the action associated with event, the state of the product or the world at the time that the event occurred, and state of the user at the time that the event occurred. In an earlier episode, we had seen properties of order placed event on an e-commerce platform. In this episode, we will take the example of product screen viewed event. On the screen here, you see a list of potential properties that you can capture for this event under all these three buckets. In the action details, you may want to capture all the information about the product as it was at the time that this product screen viewed event occurred. So something like product name is unlikely to change across different events, but product sale price, product discount, etc. can change over time, and hence you may want to capture everything that is available on that screen, including things like number of reviews available and which of the fields that are possible for this product are available at that point of time. In the state of the product, like we had seen in earlier episode, all the information related to product platform, app version number, device, network, OS, etc. can be captured. Then you may want to capture if there are any current sale or promotional event going on. You may want to capture technical information like screen load time, because they can have an impact on how users convert on this page. You may also want to capture the source of this product view. Did the user come here through internal search, or by clicking on a popular product widget, or through personal recommendations? Finally, in state of the user, you can capture properties like this: whether the user at the time of viewing this product was a member of the loyalty program you offer, the number of previous orders they have placed or returned, what is the age of the user on the product, and what was the time since they have placed the last order. The list is indicative. You can think of everything that is relevant in the context of your product. So you can create the list of properties for all the events in similar ways. Many of the properties, especially in these two buckets, may repeat across different events, and that is fine. So your final event design can be a simple spreadsheet like this, where you describe the event, you give the exact name of the event properties. Sometimes you may want to describe the values possible for the property, which helps engineers and others understand what this means, and anything else that you want to note about these events. So this is how events and properties are designed. You make sure that you always document the event design properly, because these are going to be used by you as well as others for a long time to come. Spreadsheet is good enough for documenting in most cases, but if your organization has fancier documentation tool, feel free to go ahead and use them. And then remember to work with your engineering and QA team to ensure that the events are implemented right, so that when the product launches, you have the data and analysis at your fingertips. Then moving on, apart from event and event properties, you will also need to document the user properties that you want in the event analytics tool. These will also have to be set through code at suitable points of time. To document them for the engineers and others, you may create a simple list of property names and their possible values, and they should be enough. One thing you may want to note down here is whether any of these properties are to be set one time or they are updatable. So something like side up date will be set one time. This is not going to be updated, but something like number of orders placed or whether they are the member of the loyalty program or not may be updatable. So this is what your documentation of user properties can look like. Again, if you have fancier documentation tool in your organization, feel free to go ahead and use them. So that is it for this episode. With this, we also conclude our discussion of event analytics. In the upcoming episodes, we will discuss product managers' relationship with tech, design, analytics, business, and operations, both the relationship to those skills as well as the relationship to those teams. So do tune into the next episodes as well. Thank you for watching this one.